Welcome to The Inside Story. I'm Billy Hollowell, and on today's show, we're talking about a really heartbreaking story, the death of Mandisa. This is a story that shocked the Christian world, particularly the Christian entertainment and media worlds. I'm joined today by Leah Klett. How you doing, Leah?
I'm doing great, Billy. How are you?
I'm doing well. You know, this story, you cover so much, and one big area that you have been covering is entertainment. Mandisa is somebody, we've all interviewed, we've all watched her career. What was your reaction to the news that she had passed away at 47 years old? It's just crazy.
It's just heartbreaking, Billy. I mean, Mandisa was such a light. And that became so evident after her passing. I think so many of the tributes that musicians, actors, actresses, not even Christian ones posted with just what a light she was in their life and how she quite literally shined for Jesus. And so, having interviewed her once or twice before, I can attest to that. She was just somebody who truly radiated the love of Christ. And so, her death is just such an incredible loss and so heartbreaking.
It is. And you mentioned something there that really struck me because obviously this is somebody who, like a lot of people actually in Christian music, her career started at American Idol, right? So you have somebody going to this secular space to perform on a show, and that is sort of their baseline in many ways of how people know them. And then she moved into Christian music, and watching the people react. I mean, you follow a lot of people in that space. I do as well. Almost every single post was a picture with an artist with Mandisa and this just sort of heartbreaking or inspirational message about the impact she had. I don't remember seeing that many messages, after somebody's passing. It really just struck me how many friendships and how deep her impact seemed to go, right? I mean, did you experience that as well in your social feeds?
Absolutely. It was like, I mean, American Idol alumni, Christian music artist Toby Mac, of course, had quite a few songs with her from Lose My Soul and Good Morning and Bleed the Same. And he was sort of known for just collaborating with her a lot. And he posted a pretty lengthy um, comment on Instagram about her, just how she was somebody who was so honest and open about her struggles with the intention of pointing people to Christ, and how she saw everybody as the same. We're all part of God's family, a beautiful, diverse family. Um, Amy Grant posted about how much she loved her. Just so many people remembered her. And I think that is such a testimony to the life that she lived.
Yeah, and of course we don't know, and everybody always wants to know these details on what happened. What was the cause of death? We have any more information? Is there an investigation going on? Take us through just I know it's limited, but what we do know so far.
Yes, we don't know much. Earlier this week, police said that they don't believe that there was any foul play. There was no indication that it was suspicious or criminal, and so they are continuing an investigation. Of course, her funeral is tomorrow. There is going to be a live stream, and so the report probably won't be released for a couple days, if not weeks, of exactly what happened.
Yeah, and it's really a time for people too to be praying for Mandisa's family, her friends, her loved ones, and I know people want information, but sometimes the best thing you can do is just take that back seat and pray. What would you say musically was her contribution to Christian music? Because you mentioned some of the artists. It seems like she was somebody who worked with a lot of people and had a big impact, not just personally in these artists' lives, but also musically in fans' lives.
Musically, she was, I mean, first of all, there was no denying her incredible talent. You don't place that high in American Idol without just being an incredible powerhouse vocalist. So she truly was talented, but her music, I think her album True Beauty was just so beautiful. Overcomer was so beautiful. She was so honest and authentic in her music about relying on God in the hardest times. The music that she would put out, even her collaborations with Toby Mac, everything had such strong messaging. It was so blatantly glorifying God, talking about the power of the gospel. She is somebody who truly used her platform to bring others to Christ. And I think that, so many tributes I even saw on social media where people would say, Mandisa got me through some of my toughest times because of her honesty, her vulnerability, and her music, reminding me of who I am in Christ and that I can overcome some of these issues. And so her impact on music, it can't be denied. And I once again, I really think it's just, she is such a tremendous, her death is such a tremendous loss to the Christian community and just to the music community as a whole.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you a question just, as somebody who has covered this, what sort of impact, when you look at Christian entertainment, sort of pulling back here, right? Because it's a little different from other forms of entertainment in the secular world where people are just showing up to entertain and people might like them, like some of these performers because they're funny or because maybe they know a little bit more about them. But Christian music, the artists themselves, they tend to be very not only faith forward, but their lives are put in front of people in a different way because their purpose is to point people, as you were saying, to the Lord, right? To point them to God. And so you get to know the artist on a different level, I think, in the Christian world. And for you in your position, being able to interview and speak to many of these people, including Mandisa, how has this position that you have in having those conversations, particularly with these artists, how has that maybe changed or influenced your faith and just your walk?
I think it is so invigorating. I think seeing somebody like Mandisa, and of course, she wasn't just a musician, she also wrote a book. She also had a podcast where she would talk about some of the stuff she was struggling with. I think it is so invigorating for me as a reporter, I'm sure you as a reporter, to see these people who are so bold in using their platform for the gospel and they don't care if they're canceled, and they're able to share the gospel in such a winsome way. And Mandisa is a testimony of how you can do that and cross religious, political lines. Because of course we know that the gospel is stronger than that, love is stronger than that, and she's somebody who demonstrated that. And so I think when we talk to people like this and we see a life well lived, it's something that really strikes us. And I think that is why Mandisa was able to touch so many people. People were looked at her life and said, she truly lived out what she preached. And she truly demonstrated the love of Christ to everyone she met and through her music, through her podcast, through her books, through her public appearances. And so she definitely impacted the world for Christ in just an incredibly positive way.
Yeah. Well, okay. So final question for you here, because one of the things that came up in Toby Mac's tribute, it came up even in the initial, I believe, K-Love announcement, that Mandisa was open about her struggles. And so just so maybe people who don't know her background or what she's written about or talked about, what were some of the struggles that she inspired people by being so open and vulnerable about?
Yes, she was very open about her battles with depression and suicide ideation, which she struggled with after losing a friend, and that's largely what she wrote about in her book. And she talked about how it was really counseling and a Christian community that helped uplift her. She said she found a lot of hope in the Old Testament prophet Elijah, who, of course, we see go through varying emotions. One minute he's calling down fire from the heavens and defeating the prophets, and the next minute he's sitting by a tree asking God to let him die. And I remember her using Elijah as an example of what she went through, saying one minute I am just so happy to be alive and so thankful for God's goodness, and then the next minute I'm overwhelmed with depression and anxiety. And so she was a huge advocate of Christian counseling, a huge advocate of community, and a huge advocate of talking about these issues, because she said when you do talk about them, they lose their power. And I think it was this vulnerable side that so many people resonated with.
Absolutely. And, there'll be a lot more, I think, on this story as time progresses here, at least understanding maybe what happened. And we got to be sure, again, to be praying for Mandisa's loved ones and family. Leah, as always, really appreciate you just coming on and breaking this all down today.
Absolutely, Billy. Thank you so much.
Everyone else, make sure you tune in next week for another episode of The Inside Story and head on over to the Christian Post. We will see you again next week.